Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Roy returned from a work trip, he didn't expect a concrete barricade, a private security guard, and strangers living in his home. What started as a surreal HOA stunt turned into a full-blown war for his land, his rights, and his sanity. This wasn't just trespass. When I pulled up to my house after a 4-day project trip in New Mexico, the last thing I expected to see was a concrete barricade blocking my driveway, like I'd stumbled into a military checkpoint. There was a brand new metal sign bolted to the side of it, gleaming under the Colorado sun. Private HOA property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. At first, I honestly thought it was a prank, some neighbor's idea of a twisted joke. I even chuckled until I saw the security guard standing by the gate. He looked fresh out of a private security brochure, buzzed haircut, mirrored sunglasses, black vest with Civic Guard stitched in tactical font. He held up his hand like he was flagging down a vehicle at a border crossing. "Sorry, sir, this area is temporarily restricted under Silver Mesa Heights jurisdiction," he said, like he'd rehearsed the line 100 times. "The residence has been placed under administrative review by the HOA. No unauthorized entry." I blinked. "Administrative what? This is my house." He didn't flinch. "Do you have proof of residency?" "Oh, I've got more than proof," I muttered, putting the truck in park and stepping out. "I designed this damn house, poured the foundation, ran the electrical. You're standing on land that's been in my family since the 50s. You're going to move." "Sir, please don't escalate." "You want escalation? Watch me." I didn't bother arguing with the meathead. Instead, I hiked 20 yards east through the tree line to my secondary access trail, the one I carved myself back when I built the garage. The gate there was locked, but I kept a service key in the utility box. Or rather, I had. The lock had been changed. That's when I stopped smiling. I scaled the fence, walked the slope to the side of the house, and used my old master key to open the workshop door. Thank God the internal locks hadn't been touched yet. The air inside was stale but familiar, smelled like sawdust, oil, and my life. I stepped into the main hall and heard voices upstairs. Not mine. There were bags in the entryway, suitcases. One of them was pink with a floral tag. I grabbed my phone and began filming, then headed up the stairs without a sound. The woman I found in the guest bedroom nearly dropped her phone when she saw me. "Who the hell are you?" I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. She straightened her shoulders like I'd just interrupted her at a business meeting. "Excuse me, I'm with the HOA. This property is under jurisdictional reassignment. I've been authorized to reside here during transitional oversight. Get out." "You can't just—" I walked over to the wall, opened the security cabinet, and pulled out my unloaded Remington. I didn't even point it. I just laid it on the dresser between us. "You've got 90 seconds to pack whatever you brought and leave. Take your friend downstairs with you." Her bravado deflated in real time. "You're threatening me." "Nope. I'm reminding you this is private property, and I'm the legal owner. You've broken and entered, and you've got it all on camera." She left. Fast. While they packed up, the Civic Guard guy made the mistake of entering through the kitchen. I didn't have to do much, just showed him the footage and asked him politely if he preferred to leave now or answer questions from the sheriff. He left. Didn't say a word. I called the sheriff's department myself. Deputies showed up within 30 minutes. I walked them through everything: title documents, photos, original deed, even a video from 3 years ago of me installing the front deck. They nodded along, professional and reserved. One of them asked if I'd consider letting the matter rest as a civil misunderstanding. "Sheriff," I said, pointing at the sign still planted by the gate, "this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a hostile attempt to occupy my home. And I don't care if it's Karen from across the canyon or the damn HOA president herself. This is going to court." They logged a report and left. That night, I repaired the lock, reset all security codes, and sat on my porch with a cup of coffee and my dog, Finn. Around midnight, the motion lights flared. I checked the camera feed. Someone had walked up to the edge of the ridge, shined a flashlight toward the house, then disappeared back down the hill. I saved the footage. Something told me I was going to need it. The next morning, I found an envelope taped to my front door. Not in the mailbox, taped, center screen, like a middle finger in paper form. Letterhead read, "Silver Mesa Heights Homeowners Association." My name was printed in all caps, misspelled, classy. I sat down at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, and opened it. "Dear Mr. Bridges," it began. Per boundary reassignment protocol dated August 1st, this parcel now falls within the jurisdiction of Silver Mesa Heights HOA. Your property has been enrolled effective immediately. Enclosed you will find community guidelines, your HOA membership notice, and your initial invoice for the quarterly dues. Enrolled? They'd stapled a printout of a revised zoning map that looked like it had been drawn by a drunk raccoon. The boundaries were redrawn with a heavy red Sharpie line to include my parcel, despite the fact there was a literal canyon between me and the rest of Silver Mesa Heights. I flipped the page and found a notarized membership consent form, supposedly signed by me, complete with a squiggled signature that looked nothing like mine, and a date from 2 weeks ago, when I was in Albuquerque giving a talk at a design symposium. They'd forged my damn signature. I didn't bother calling the number on the letter. I drove straight to the county office. The zoning clerk looked bored until I handed her the fake map and the consent form. She perked up when I showed her my deed and ID. "This looks messy," she muttered, frowning. "There's a pending reassignment request tied to your parcel, but your deed's clean. I can put in a freeze." Oh, wait. She paused, typing something. "It's already flagged. There's a temporary administrative hold from a Jeremy Fowler?" That name stuck in my jaw like a splinter. Fowler was the county records officer, a man known unofficially for community flexibility. Translation: HOA money talked, and Fowler listened. I'd seen his name before in news comments, always around HOA land disputes. I left the office with nothing but a digital receipt and a headache. Back home, I had 3 voicemails. One from my bank asking if I'd authorized HOA assessments, another from some guy calling himself legal counsel for Silver Mesa Heights, and a third from a woman I recognized instantly. "Mr. Bridges," Karen Spaulding's voice purred. "I'm disappointed you chose confrontation over cooperation. The HOA tried to reach you before the transition. Unfortunately, your recent aggression complicates things. I've filed a report with local authorities regarding your violent behavior. I'd prefer to resolve this civilly, but the board is prepared to pursue legal avenues. We hope you'll come around." I replayed that last line. Come around. Right. I barely had time to process it before my security app pinged, motion detected near the workshop. I pulled up the feed. 2 people were stapling signs to my fence, flyers reading, "Warning, aggressive trespasser on HOA territory. Use caution." I went outside. They ran. Later that night, a drone buzzed above my house, lingering over the patio for a solid minute before zipping off into the darkness. I shot it with a paintball gun. Neon green splattered its little plastic shell before it vanished over the ridge. Around 11, someone egged my truck. Not just eggs, raw meat too. Chicken livers. Who the hell throws offal? Then, at 1 in the morning, Finn, my dog, started wheezing. He'd eaten something from the yard. The vet later said it was probably laced with sedatives. I didn't sleep. The next morning, my attorney called. "I got a copy of the lawsuit," she said. "They're suing you." "For what?" "For unlawful eviction of a temporary HOA representative, damages to community assets, threatening behavior, and obstruction of neighborhood administration." I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. "They're serious?" "Oh, they're dead serious, and if I were you, I'd stop laughing. They hired Thomas Krieg out of Boulder. He's a heavy hitter. I threw out squatters from my own house, and now I'm being sued by the HOA I'm not even a member of. Welcome to Colorado, Roy, where concrete suburbs come with private armies and lawyers on speed dial." I looked out my window at the still smudged fence, the pile of crumpled flyers in my trash bin, and the security lights flicking on and off from phantom motion in the night. War had been declared. The day after the lawsuit hit me like a bag of bricks, I sat in my home office with 3 different piles of documents spread across the desk. My deed, every permit I'd ever pulled for the house, and the entire paper trail of the forged HOA. Membership. The deeper I dug, the more twisted it became. Silver Mesa Heights hadn't just forged my signature. They'd filed a boundary clarification request with the county zoning board, claiming my land had previously been accidentally excluded from the HOA when the development was built. According to their story, I was just now joining the community like a prodigal neighbor finally seeing the light. Except the kicker. The request had already been approved. That was when I realized I wasn't fighting idiots. I was fighting a machine. I called the county zoning office again and demanded to speak with Jeremy Fowler. His assistant put me on hold for 12 minutes before telling me he was out of office indefinitely due to a medical procedure. Yeah, sure, the same medical procedure that buys you time to lawyer up. Meanwhile, my attorney, Karen Navarro, God bless her, filed an emergency injunction to suspend any HOA authority over my property. Within hours, we got a response from the HOA's legal team, motion to dismiss, citing non-existent jurisdictional conflict. Their argument boiled down to this: since I had already consented via the forged document, I was now under HOA authority and therefore had no right to contest actions they had taken on their own property. My property. Let that sink in. As Navarro put it, they're using the fake signature as proof that the fake signature is valid. Things only got worse from there. I logged into my online banking to transfer money for legal fees and saw a pending withdrawal marked Silver Mesa Heights, Q4 HOA dues. They had submitted a payment request to my mortgage escrow account. I called the bank and shut it down immediately, but the damage was done. A red flag appeared on my mortgage account, triggering a fraud review and delaying my next property tax payment. That same day, I got served again, this time by a courier in a shiny black Prius who looked smug as hell when he handed me the envelope. Another lawsuit, this one from Molly Spaulding, Karen's niece, the same girl I'd kicked out of my guest room. Allegations included unlawful eviction, psychological distress, and brandishing a deadly weapon. Apparently, she was now in trauma counseling. According to the suit, I'd intimidated her with a military-style assault rifle and made threatening comments about trespassers being buried on the mountain. I don't even own a military-style rifle, and I'd never bury someone. I'm an architect. I care too much about soil drainage. Karen Navarro reviewed the filing and just muttered, "They're laying the groundwork to bury you in legal noise." She wasn't wrong. 2 days later, I received a visit from code enforcement. A man in a tucked-in polo shirt with a county badge and the nervous energy of someone who hates his job told me there'd been an anonymous report about unpermitted improvements. When I asked what improvements, he squinted at his clipboard and said, "It says here, solar panels and illegal fencing. I have no solar panels, and my fence was built 10 years ago with a permit signed by the same damn office." The following evening, I noticed 3 vehicles parked in a row just beyond the ridge, 2 SUVs and a pickup, all with out-of-state plates. I stepped outside with a flashlight and aimed it in their direction. They didn't move, just sat there. Lights off, engines running. That night someone slashed all 4 tires on my truck. I'd had enough. The next morning, I filed a police report, uploaded every piece of evidence I had into a secure cloud drive, and installed 3 new motion-activated trail cameras on the hillside. I also replaced every exterior lock on the house and double-wired the perimeter floodlights. I wasn't just defending my property anymore. I was digging in. The air was thin and cold that morning, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. I stood on the deck with a mug of coffee, staring out at the canyon between my house and Silver Mesa Heights. Somewhere on the other side of that ridge, Karen Spaulding was sipping her overpriced herbal tea, probably drafting another cease and desist letter, but this time, I wasn't going to wait for her next move. I called Landon. Landon West is the kind of man you don't bring into a fight unless you're ready to win it. He used to be a federal prosecutor back in D.C. Now semi-retired, living off the grid outside Telluride and occasionally stepping back into the arena for people he cares about. My dad helped him through a nasty inheritance case 20 years ago. Now it was my turn to call in the favor. He showed up that evening in a black Bronco, wearing an oilskin jacket and carrying a battered leather briefcase that looked like it had seen the inside of the Capitol and the trunk of a swamp boat in the same week. We sat in my office while I walked him through everything: the forged documents, the injunctions, the bogus lawsuits, the tire slashing, the HOA dues, and Molly's melodramatic trauma claim. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Let's find them a coffin, Roy. We'll just let them choose the nails." He wasn't joking. First, we went digging through my archived video files. A month before all this started, I had flown a drone across the property to capture a series of landscape shots for my design portfolio. We pulled the footage and reviewed it frame by frame. And there it was. Crystal clear overhead shots showing my home, my private road, and the unbroken wall of forest and rock separating me from the HOA development. Separate utility lines, separate water feed, No shared easement, no overlapping roads, not a single square inch of physical connection. It was a visual map of their lies. Then came the break we didn't expect. Landon contacted a private investigator he'd used in a corporate fraud case a few years back. Within 48 hours, the guy tracked down Joseph Pinnell, a former contractor for a third-party mapping firm that had been hired by Silver Mesa Heights in the spring. Joe had quit abruptly in June. At the time, nobody knew why. Now we did. He'd been told by HOA leadership, Karen specifically, to redraw the subdivision overlay to better reflect future administrative expansion. When he'd refused to certify it without a county review, he was pushed out. Silenced. He still had the emails and the draft overlays. It was exactly what we needed. Landon offered him conditional immunity and confidentiality protection. Joe agreed to give a sworn affidavit and testify if needed. With drone footage, affidavit, time-stamped emails, and the original deed in hand, Landon filed for an emergency evidentiary hearing in the county district court. We requested a preliminary injunction and full injunctive relief under Colorado Revised Statute 3833.3, the one that deals with fraudulent HOA enforcement beyond their jurisdiction. Judge Haley Watson took the filing the next morning. She was known to be hard on fraud and allergic to HOA overreach. We had her full attention. The court date was set for 5 days out, but the response from Silver Mesa Heights came faster than expected. Karen filed a cross motion to dismiss the injunction, claimed our evidence was inconclusive and unverified, and went on to accuse me of public endangerment, libel, and malicious interference with HOA operations. She even claimed I'd orchestrated a digital disinformation campaign using drone surveillance. I nearly fell off my chair laughing. But Landon didn't. She's ramping up, he said. That means she's scared. And when people like her get scared, they get reckless. He was right. That night, someone spray-painted Community Menace in red letters across my garage door. I left it up, took photos, let them bury themselves. We were almost ready for court. The courtroom smelled like lemon cleaner and nerves. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Landon beside me, calm as a mountain lake. Across the aisle, Karen Spaulding perched at the head of the HOA's defense table, flanked by 2 attorneys in expensive suits who looked like they practiced power poses in front of mirrors. The judge, Haley Watson, entered without ceremony. She didn't look like someone who tolerated nonsense, and that gave me hope. The first hour was procedural, introductions, motions. Landon cut straight through. Your Honor, he said, rising, we intend to demonstrate that the HOA, under the direction of Mrs. Spaulding, knowingly submitted falsified property boundary documents, forged my client's signature, and enacted a campaign of administrative and physical harassment to illegally absorb private property for jurisdictional and financial gain. The defense immediately objected to the language. Judge Watson didn't flinch. You'll have your turn, counselor. Sit down. We began with the drone footage. The monitor lit up with high-resolution images. My house, the private road winding up the ridge, and the untouched buffer of forest separating me from Silver Mesa Heights. Landon narrated calmly. No shared roads, no overlapping infrastructure, no points of access. Your Honor, this is not just a different property. It is a geographically isolated estate. Next came the emails from Joseph Pinnell. His affidavit detailed the exact instructions he'd received from the HOA's board president to redraw the parcel overlays and suppress review. His resignation email, polite, uncomfortable but firm, spoke volumes. Then came the forged document itself. A notary stamp from an out-of-state firm, a signature that looked like a toddler mimicking cursive, and a consent to jurisdiction form with the wrong middle initial. Landon dropped it like a hammer. This is the cornerstone of their case, he said. And it's a fraud. The defense countered with a spin so aggressive it could have drilled a hole through bedrock. Karen's lawyer argued that the documents were submitted in good faith and that community realignment was initiated based on planning assumptions and historical land usage patterns. Translation: we guessed, we lied, and we hoped no one would notice. Then Karen stood up. She requested to address the court directly. The judge, curious or maybe just patient, allowed it. Karen clasped her hands and started in the tone of a benevolent kindergarten teacher. Your Honor, Mr. Bridges has unfortunately resisted every opportunity to join the neighborhood. He's been combative, hostile, and frankly, disruptive to the sense of unity we've worked hard to build. She looked right at me. I understand that change is difficult, but when we build communities, we sometimes need to make room for shared values. The HOA acted to include his property out of necessity, not malice. I couldn't help it. I let out a dry laugh. Judge Watson looked at me but didn't scold. Then she turned back to Karen. "Mrs. Spaulding," the judge said, "are you telling this court that forging a property owner's signature and authorizing occupation of his home were acts of unity?" Karen blinked. "Well, I wouldn't say forgery exactly." "No? Then what word would you use for a notarized document falsely attributed to Mr. Bridges, filed without his knowledge?" Karen's lips pressed into a tight line. The judge leaned back, made a note, then looked at the defense. "I am denying your motion to dismiss," she said. "Effective immediately, the HOA is prohibited from entering, claiming, or enforcing any action regarding Mr. Bridges' property until this matter is fully resolved. Furthermore, I am issuing an order for a forensic review of all documents submitted by the HOA regarding parcel boundary changes." Karen's lawyer began to protest, but Judge Watson held up a hand like she was waving off a mosquito. "Counselor, I've seen enough HOA games to know when someone's trying to plant a flag on land that isn't theirs. It was the first time since this began that I felt something other than pressure behind my eyes." It wasn't over, but the tide had shifted. As we left the courtroom, Karen stood at the courthouse steps giving a statement to a local news crew. I heard her say the words miscommunication and unfortunate misunderstanding more times than I cared to count. I didn't stop to talk. I had one thing on my mind now. Discovery phase. We were about to see exactly what she'd buried, and how deep. 3 days after the hearing, the first domino fell. The Sheriff's Department, under Judge Watson's expedited order, executed a search warrant on the HOA's administrative office. It was a small building on the edge of the development, one of those faux stone sheds that tried too hard to look official. By noon, deputies were hauling out filing cabinets, desktop towers, and cardboard boxes with sticky notes labeled board minutes, maps, and membership. The local paper got wind of it and sent a reporter. I watched it all from the feed on my phone, sitting in my kitchen with Finn curled up at my feet and a loaded flash drive on the counter, just in case. By sunset, I got the call. They found everything, Landon said flatly. Hand-drawn parcel edits, versions of the forged map with different lot lines, HOA board emails coordinating the reclassification campaign. Oh, and something even better, correspondence with Fowler. Jeremy Fowler, the county records officer who placed the administrative hold on my deed, had left a digital trail as neat as a roadmap. He'd exchanged over a dozen emails with Karen and one of her board members discussing procedural delays, strategic suppression of property records, and even one chilling phrase, "Bridge this gap before owner returns." Turns out the only gap they bridged was the one to prison. That same night, Fowler was placed on leave and subpoenaed. He lawyered up immediately. Rumor was he'd already offered a cooperation deal to the DA, and then came the flip. Molly Spaulding, Karen's niece and the alleged traumatized victim, walked into the county prosecutor's office the next morning and signed a statement. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity from criminal charges. She admitted everything. That she had been instructed to pose as a transitional steward while the HOA executed the property claim. That she had been given the fake consent form ahead of time, that she never lived in the house under a valid contract. That Karen had assured her, "It'll all be cleared up once the paperwork settles. Roy just needs to cool off." She even admitted that the flyer campaign, the signs, the drone, they were all coordinated by the HOA board under Karen's direction. It was over. Karen was arrested that evening at her home. The charges: fraudulent conveyance, filing false instruments, criminal trespass via proxy, conspiracy to commit property theft, and tampering with county records. The mugshot hit the local news like a lightning bolt. Gone was the curated image of the composed HOA queen. In its place, someone who looked like the empire had collapsed on her shoulders. I watched it live, standing in the middle of my living room, arms crossed, heart oddly still. It wasn't joy. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was the sound of pressure breaking. The following day, the HOA board held an emergency meeting, or tried to. Only 8 people showed up. 3 members resigned on the spot. One of them, I later learned, had already entered a plea agreement. The county issued an administrative freeze on Silver Mesa Heights operations. Pending full investigation, all enforcement powers were suspended. Homeowners were advised to hold off on dues and ignore all directives. For the first time in weeks, my inbox was silent. The graffiti was scrubbed off my garage by two teenagers from the neighborhood. No one told them to. They just showed up with paint thinner and buckets. "You don't know us," one said, eyes low. But she didn't speak for everybody. I nodded. "You've got a good head on your shoulders. Don't waste it on HOA politics." He grinned. "Hell no." I spent that afternoon reinstalling my original gate hardware and reinstalling a new custom lock system. No keypad, no wireless access, just solid steel and gravity, the way I liked it. That night, for the first time in a long time, I left the porch lights off and let the stars do their job. By the end of the week, Karen Spaulding was out on bail, her mugshot circulating like wildfire. The HOA was frozen, its board gutted, and the local paper had published a 2-page Sunday spread titled "Homeowner or Hostage When the HOA Goes Too Far." My name was in the article 5 times, 3 as the victim, twice as local architect. I could live with that. But I wasn't done. What they tried to do wasn't just harassment. It wasn't a dispute. It was calculated, systemic property fraud. It had nearly cost me access to my home, damaged my business, endangered my dog, and rattled the very foundation of what it meant to own anything in this country. So we filed. Landon drafted a civil complaint that read more like a novel than a legal brief. 84 pages of timelines, email chains, financial interference, security threats, false liens, and personal damage. The filing included sworn statements from 3 other property owners who'd had run-ins with Karen before, but had been too intimidated to speak up until now. The complaint named Karen Spaulding, Silver Mesa Heights HOA as an entity, 3 board members who had voted in favor of jurisdictional expansion, Jeremy Fowler, the Civic Guard security contractor who refused to allow me onto my own land. Damages claimed, $1.4 million. That covered everything. Lost business income, legal costs, security upgrades, emotional distress, defamation, fraudulent filing, and, as Landon insisted on including, ongoing risk of malicious retaliation. Karen's new attorney, her original one, dropped her like a live grenade, tried to settle. He offered $100,000, then $250,000, then $4,000. We declined. The judge, same one from before, reviewed our complaint and accepted it in full. No preliminary dismissal. No narrowing of claims. Her clerk scheduled a jury trial 6 months out, but added a side note. Plaintiff has standing to request expedited summary if new criminal charges are confirmed. Then came the cherry on top. The HOA's insurance provider, some regional firm based out of Utah, declared they would not be covering the board's legal fees. They cited gross negligence and intentional misconduct. Translation: everyone who'd hitched themselves to Karen was now paying for their own lawyers. Out of pocket. I got an email from a former board member the next day. "I never believed you. I thought you were just being difficult. I was wrong. I hope you bury them." I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on rebuilding the parts of my life they'd fractured. My work had slowed. Understandable, given everything. But the calls were starting again. A builder in Wyoming wanted a ski lodge design. A couple in Taos needed a modern passive solar layout. My name was intact. In the neighborhood, something shifted. People started waving again. A few even dropped off baked goods. No apologies, just gestures. I accepted them with quiet nods and no obligation. My dog, Finn, had bounced back. He was sleeping at my feet again, not flinching at every creak outside. But the house, my house, felt different now. Not tainted, just heavier, like the walls had taken a punch and held their ground. That night, I stood by the fire pit with Landon, a bottle of bourbon between us, the mountains silent and unbothered. "You think she'll get jail time?" I asked. "She deserves it," he said. "But this system, who knows? Either way, civil court will do what criminal court doesn't." I sipped my drink and nodded. "Good. I want them broke before I want them locked up." He raised his glass. That's the spirit. 2 weeks after the lawsuit was accepted in full, I tore down the metal gate that had once separated my driveway from the world. The concrete footers cracked under the weight of my crowbar, and when the last rusted hinge hit the gravel, I felt something deep in my ribs unclench. Then I got to work. It took me 3 days, 4 pallets of hand-cut stone, and the kind of stubbornness you only inherit from men who built things before permits were invented. What replaced the gate wasn't just an entryway, it was a monument. A 10-foot archway of Colorado sandstone fused at the keystone with an iron plaque I'd designed myself. This property is not for sale, not for rent, and never for Karen. I didn't hold a ceremony, didn't invite neighbors. But somehow, they came anyway. First, it was the teenage kid who'd scrubbed the graffiti off my garage. He brought his dad, a quiet, broad-shouldered guy who handed me a six-pack and said, "For what it's worth, I never liked those people." Then came an elderly couple from down the road, both carrying folding chairs. Eventually, a small crowd gathered by the archway, murmuring like tourists at a historic marker. Nobody asked for speeches, so I didn't give one. That night, I sat on the porch with Finn by my side and Landon in the chair opposite mine. The fire pit was low, the stars were sharp, and the only sound was the wind skimming across the ridge like it had places to be. Landon broke the silence. "You know this kind of thing's gonna hit the circuits. National HOA reform, civil case textbooks, maybe even a podcast." I shrugged. "Let them talk. I've said what I needed to." He raised his glass. "To land, that stays yours." We drank. The next morning, I found another envelope in my mailbox, this one from an unfamiliar legal firm. The return address, Denver. I didn't even open it. I walked straight to the fire pit, tossed it in, and watched it burn. Later that day, a woman pulled into the gravel turnout at the edge of the property. Mid-30s, cautious eyes, clipboard in hand. Surveyor, maybe, or one of Karen's leftover leeches trying to sniff around for scraps. She didn't get far. She saw the arch, read the plaque, and got back in her car. Smart. I spent the rest of the day walking the perimeter of my land, the sun at my back, the smell of dry sagebrush and pine in the air. The trails were still mine. The house was still mine. The mountain still knew my name. And if anyone else came looking to claim it again, they'd find the same thing Karen did, an architect with teeth.